Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the Revenue Optimists. It's a space where go-to-market leaders and revenue operations folks can really come together to try and learn from one another in order to grow their businesses. My name is Dave Nelson, and with me today, I'm very fortunate to be joined by Cheryl Leary, who's the Senior Director of Global Sales Operations at Dynatrace. Thanks very much for joining us, Cheryl.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I have been in the sales operations space for most of my career. After a little stint in IT, I spent most of my time at a much larger company at HP, all around the sales operations space with customer master data and CRM solutions, et cetera, CPQ, kind of all of that soup to nuts in there. And then just under 2 years ago, I decided to go to a much smaller company from where I came, although it's bigger to some, and I moved over to Dynatrace. And that's when I came into leading out an organization that I had been kind of a part of, and I could be a bigger fish in a smaller pond and really make a bigger change here. So
I believe it. No, that's great. And you're right. Dynatrace is still a pretty big company to some. On that note, can you tell us a little bit more about Dynatrace, what they do and what their focus is?
Sure. Dynatrace is actually a really exciting company. We're the market leader in observability and application performance management. Essentially, the role of Dynatrace, when you bring it into your company, is to be like a set of IT engineers who are constantly understanding what issues might be happening in your network and any of your systems, or what vulnerabilities. We also do security vulnerabilities might be there. And essentially, we have this great AI behind the scenes that will identify all of those risks, present them for you, and in some cases even solve them. So we can really make sure that we find the issues before your customers see them.
Fantastic. That's great. And who do you typically sell to? What are the types of businesses, sizes, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we some of our competitors might work in a little bit of a smaller space, but our product works the best when you can put our Davis AI engine in there and then run everything around it. So we do tend to work with the larger companies. We will work with companies that it needs to be on all the time. So whether that be financial services, healthcare, anything with a heavy technology base where people are using applications, or they're going to walk away if we can't log in and get what they need to get done.
Mission critical.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, your background is incredible. So you've worked at giant organizations and now still a fairly large organization. And you've been at Dynatrace for quite a while, for 2 years, but obviously not too long to forget what it's like when you shift over to a new business. So in your opinion, what's the best way to approach coming into a new role as revenue operations folks? What should we be focusing on for the first 3 to 6 months kind of thing?
Great question. So I think that when you come into an organization, you really need to identify what's working well and what's not working before you come in and decide to make a change, right? And the best way I would say to do that is really to go back and to talk to people. Don't just talk to the people who are working for you or your manager coming in, but kind of talk to all different stakeholders across the organization and beyond your organization. Really, that interview process where you ask those probing questions and really get down into, what inefficiencies do you see here? What is it that we can do better? Where do you see things successful? So you know what to keep, and you can start to dig down into it. And you'll find some commonalities usually within there. Often customer mastering is one of those commonalities that somebody's not going to say, hey, I have this issue because I wish we had a better account hierarchy, but they're going to say, I'm getting a pricing discrepancy for my folks in Asia. And then you can step back. And by kind of looking and stepping back, you can see the root causes, especially people in operations, because it's usually about systems or processes behind the scenes that are causing it. So kind of keep digging back until you find those common things.
That's fantastic. And I like it. So in that case, it sounds like you're talking to the sales reps themselves. And I think what you're suggesting is you're talking to a whole bunch of people. What would be the other roles and departments that you'd be recommending to talk to?
Yep. So really, honestly, you want to touch anybody that works within your cycle. So in my particular area, much of what I do in my career is related to the CRM system. So really being able to have a rep go in, create an opportunity, understand their customer, be able to sell it, price it out, sell it, and get it going. So in that space, you would really want to talk to the inputs, right? So what's going on in the organization that brings in the marketing leads? What is going on in the organization that takes those closed deals and executes them from an order management perspective or a pricing perspective? Kind of take a map of the whole process around for which you own and try and get pieces outside of it. It also is really helpful because that tends to build camaraderie and helps you to understand those people better, so that you're starting to break down any of those silos that might be there. So the more people you talk to, the more connections you'll make, and I think the more connected you'll be.
I bet that's such a great idea. And I love that you're getting that insight from everyone else, because I think you're right. It'll help you diagnose the problems a lot more holistically if you're hearing from everybody. So how do you kind of operationalize that? What does that look like going forward when you're trying to then work on a specific project down the road?
Well, so there's lots of different ways you can do this. Of course, we want to have a holistic approach with all the other operational teams or business operations folks. One thing that I would really recommend that I have found to be successful many points in my career on any of those larger projects, right? So now you've identified, here's a pain point that we want to fix, right? Here's the top 5 projects we really want to work. What I found to be very successful in my career is to make sure that you are talking to not just your operations folks, not just your IT folks, but the people on the street. And to do it in a formal way that you're really getting that sort of a buy-in. One of the things that I had challenged a bit, I took an agile, a course on agile methodology, right, which is the getting your systems out there. And they said, okay, get your business stakeholders in, have your business stakeholders in early, get their feedback. But in a lot of times, those sorts of projects are thinking about your business stakeholders as business operations, not as truly the business. And so I think that a pitfall we really want to avoid is making assumptions about how the business works, especially in a growing business or a changing business. You might think you understand what your sales team needs, but then that might be 2 years old or a year older. They might be selling differently. And hey, what about Chat GPT and everything that's happened there, right? Like, the world is changing around us. Our products are changing. And so we need to keep. So I guess what I'd say there is a formal program, specifically to implement like a formal program. I tend to do a tops down and a bottoms up. So we'll do a leadership to understand from the sales leadership, what are their, are we headed in the right direction? Are we increasing the pulse of the business? And then from the bottom up, even more important, like a champion program. And so that's really formalizing and bringing sales into the fold in a limited way to your decisions.
That's great. Yeah, because obviously you want the leaders voicing their opinion on what they need from the business, what they want to see, metrics and whatnot, tools. But I love that you're also including the operators, the sales reps themselves, because of course they're the end user. Yeah. They're the people that you're trying to facilitate at the end of the day. So what does that look like? You mentioned a champion program. Mm-hmm. What does the champion program look like, or what do you recommend?
Yeah. So again, I've done it in a number of different forms in my career. What I find to be successful is, first of all, buy-in, right? When you want to do a program, you need not just the sales reps, but also the sales leaders to understand and appreciate not just the time that they're going to take, but the value that they're going to get out of it, like the what's in it for me. So typically I'll work with the sales leaders and say, okay, you're going to be asking them to dedicate 4 hours. I want you to select some sales reps, and they're going to be dedicating 4 hours of their month talking with us and helping us, but they're going to become advocates for their team. You're going to get your needs heard, really helping them to understand. And so that's one piece of it. Another piece is really getting the right reps on board. So you don't want to just have reps in the US. A lot of times people might say, oh, well, here's the rep that's in the office or the rep that I know. But globally, there's a lot of differences and there's a lot of different priorities. So you want to be global. You want to have new reps with these new ideas, and tenured reps that have been there and understand the product and understand the company really well. But regardless, you want people who are going to go out there and give their opinions in a productive way. So really framing it up, making people excited to be a part of it, having the leadership buy in for it, and then getting that groundswell and the excitement that they can be like they're selected by their management, or they're volunteering and they're talking to their manager about it and sharing it with their teams.
Okay, nice. So if I understood it correctly, you have both the management suggesting folks on the team to join, and I'm guessing, like you said, newer and more tenured reps, but also volunteers. What is the kind of criteria that you would recommend managers use? Is it the people with the most time on their hands? Is it their top performers that are crushing it and probably know best, but don't have a lot of time? Or how do they go through that?
I can tell you that for the most part, managers will actually know that person, right? So we say don't bring more than like 20% of your organization into this. This is more of like a 10 to 20% of your sales teams. Most managers will be like, oh my God, that's the person that always has something to say about the systems, right? Or something to say about how to improve things. We really look for the vocal people, not the people who are complaining, not that anybody does, but occasionally you'll get a person out there. Never. Who's like, this is horrible and I don't want to do. No, you want the person who they're hearing with the new ideas and they're hearing with it. And again, sometimes they're not a well-performing rep because the environment isn't right for them, and then this would make them better. Or maybe they're a really high-performing rep, but you wouldn't want them in there anyway because they're just doing the same thing and they don't need any change. So I think really the management discretion, and I'm sorry, if you volunteer, you're really showing a lot of, a lot of ownership for your own self and for your excitement. And those tends to be the people that are most vocal.
Nice. Oh, that's great. And actually, you surprised me that you said 10 to 20% of the sales staff. So that could be a lot of people that you're including in this.
Yeah. So what we tend to say is, and again, there's lots of different ways to structure this, but if you're expecting people to spend, about 4 hours a month, and I think that that's about a reasonable amount from a sales rep's perspective. It depends on how much you want to achieve, but there might be different projects, right? So I know even at Dynatrace right now, we're working a whole host of projects. We're not going to ask everybody to come in and work on everything because or else that would be too much. And so by having kind of a larger team, and again, by really making sure you're spread across the organization, you're getting your information out. So they're getting excited about what's coming and they're sharing it out, but they don't need to be involved in every single project or every single discussion. So one option would be to say, here's the 5 projects we're working, pick 1 or 2 that you might be interested in. And then you're also going to find some people who are very excited to be there, but don't have a lot to say. And so in order to make sure you really get the voices, it's good to have, a few more to start with.
Very smart. I like it. And I'm sure people get busy and they'll have to travel and whatnot. So smart to have that overlap so that you're covered.
Yeah.
That's great. So you're working on tons of projects right now. And you've obviously done this for a while. Any gotchas or things that you would recommend that people kind of consider or go into when they're setting up a program like that?
So as I said, I think you need to make sure that you are giving a value to the sales team. So we tend to, when you're going to launch this sort of a program, you're going to want to say, hey, sales leaders, look at what a great job these people did here. One thing that we did here at Dynatrace was we had them at the sales kickoff. They all wore a ribbon, which then showed it to the rest of the team, and we had a special breakfast. Making people feel appreciated, and also making sure that you're in a place where you can deliver the results they're looking for. Because what a pitfall you really need to watch out for is you get a bunch of people in, they give you 150 ideas that are off the top of their head and none of them get implemented. You want to be really structured in it. You want to come into each meeting or call with an agenda and say, this is our focus area, and you need to be ready to focus on that focus area. If you don't have the buy-in, if you don't have the resources to do that, you're going to quickly lose people because they're going to say, well, I told you I wanted these 6 things. I didn't get any of them. Whereas if you led them to, here's the box for which we're working in, we've got the resources to work in this box, and they pick these 3 things, you can get 2 of those 3 things done because everybody needs them. And then they know they have a voice and you're also focusing on what's important. So
and imagine that's a lot easier said than done. I imagine people are going to want to go in different directions of what they're passionate about or what was most frustrating recently kind of thing. How do you drive them to those 2 or 3 things that you're trying to make decisions on.
Yeah. A lot of herding cats. No, I'm just teasing. So honestly, again, coming in with an agenda, with a very specific set of this is it, and also sometimes giving them a place to go for those other ideas. So I really appreciate this idea you had over here. We're not going to lose it. We're not going to forget about it, but we're going to put it in this section here and then being able to come back to it. But I think by giving people a guidepost to go, most people will go towards that guidepost, and that's what they'll focus around. Another way, and just in general, right, you're going to have people who are on the calls and are just chatting up a storm about everything that they're thinking of, and then you take the notes and you put them down and you put those others, to the side to work on later, put them into their own box. Is, having like a Slack channel, right, or a communication, an IM channel where people can put out their ideas and their thoughts, or coming up with a form that they can fill out and they can put their ideas in that form and say this is something they want to do, so that they know that you hear them, but you're not changing your focus all the time, because you really do need
to hone in, get something done. Yeah, that's great. I like it. And so you've had a lot of practice at this. Any examples of what has gone really well that you can share that others might be able to take advantage of and do the same?
Yeah. So I've done a number of these again in my career. I'll just pick the most recent one, obviously, is at Dynatrace, where we implemented a formal program for this. And I mean, I think that we can say that it's been very successful here. There's a lot of excitement, groundswell from it. And one of the projects, and it's a very straightforward project, is we needed to move to Lightning. So Sales, for anyone who's using Salesforce, from the switch from Classic to Lightning has a lot of UI changes, and there's a lot of stuff you can do. So initially, of course, the operations team and the IT team, they come in and they say, I think this should look like this, and this should be over here. All very basic stuff. Just putting it in front of those champions, they tore it to shreds, right? I mean, because there were some parts we liked, right? There were some parts we did well, but we don't know how they work on a day-to-day basis as well as they do. And so we involved them early and often for that Lightning switch. And we were able to then really make a product that worked for them in the way that they needed. And so we've actually done that with a number of projects. We'll go in one direction, kind of just peek it over their shoulder and say, is this right? Sometimes we get the thumbs up, and sometimes we get the go back and try again, and here's my advice. So
thanks. I believe it. So in that case, you actually did kind of a proof of concept. You had actually built out what it might look like and ran it by them to get feedback.
Yeah, so we can even before you get to that point, we've done proof of concept on some of it, but even before it, hey, we did an interview. What are your top 5 things that you need when you're looking at an account? What are the top 5 things that you're looking for? And by doing that sort of surveying, even with them, you start to see the commonalities that then allow you to make sure that you're getting a good proof of concept to then come in front. So nice. Another piece of advice for that sort of thing is getting in front of them, show them this is what we heard, this is what we did, this is how it came out, and this is how we're going to share it. Really letting them be part of that process in each step.
Cool. Nice. Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Now, that sounds like it's a great example when you're building something out and customizing it like Lightning. Would you recommend the same for bringing in new tools, or is it more for kind of custom builds and revamp of projects?
You can use it for any type of thing. The only thing I would be cautious of is if you don't know that you're going to have the funding, or if you're going to potentially make a different decision than they're going to like, right? So you might be looking at 2 or 3 tools. One of them is very expensive. Probably that's the one they're going to say is the best thing since sliced bread. But if you don't think that you're reasonably like, okay, that one's a stretch, you usually want to get to a certain place where what you're presenting to them, if they choose something, they can move forward with what they're choosing within reason. Right. Nice. So I would just be a little more careful on anything that requires a technical investment.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's a good call. Well, that's great. Thank you. I think that's applicable for everybody. And you know what? I haven't actually heard of anyone doing that. And perhaps there are others out there doing the same. But what a great idea to actually bring the stakeholders in, both leaders and boots on the ground, to give you that insight on what you should be doing.